On today's news, let's talk about Capcom, the Japanese video game developer that is giving us amazing series like Resident Evil, Dino Crisis, Onimusha, and many others. But on today's focus, we're going to be talking about Resident Evil's franchise, which, surprisingly, but not so surprisingly, this is actually happening now. Like, one could have only really thought that this was truly bound to happen with such a poor decision made by Capcom on this. Whenever they released Resident Evil 3, in 2020, the game ended up getting a lot of criticism. The main criticism was that the game was too freaking short. It was actually a little bit shorter than the original game. And the worst part is that their resources weren't even allocated the best way that they could have been. They ended up also releasing a game called Resident Evil 3 Universe or Resident Evil RE-verse or some crap like that nobody really cared about. I really honestly never played it. I think I saw a few videos. Maybe it gained a little bit of traction for some moment, but on today's news, we're actually seeing that a Resident Evil game is shutting down forever. Capcom announces an upcoming shutdown of a Resident Evil game less than 3 years following its original release on PC and consoles, which is Resident Evil RE-verse. Excuse me, correction on how I butchered the name before, because I honestly gave two big you-know-whats about this freaking game and its multiplayer. But anyways, RE-verse is shutting down on June 29, 2.5 years following its release. The live service game and its DLC packs will be pulled from all storefronts on March 3rd. In the meantime, Capcom will continue giving away complimentary copies of RE-verse to anyone who purchases Resident Evil Village. So this really goes to tell you that if they had not focused at all on making this terrible multiplayer game, I say terrible game because they really didn't get any traction. I mean, maybe it could have been fun. Maybe it could have been actually somewhat good. I really don't know. I didn't try it. If anybody did and is listening to this, comment below what you think about the game. Say if it was good. If it's not, give it a rating, from 1 to 10, whatever you want to do. Feel free to do it. But in my opinion, this is just a misallocation of resources because at the end of the day, what is truly Resident Evil about? Resident Evil is about the lore, the stories, the characters, the single player campaign. And in my eyes, whenever Resident Evil 3 Remake was done, rushed out the door after the success of Resident Evil 2 that was released in January 2019. Phenomenal game. I mean, Resident Evil 3 Remake, to me, it's still a great game. It's really fun. But I know that the game could have been even better. And that's the part that bothers me, is that the game could have been more in depth. It could have been longer. It could have had more boss fights or perhaps even better ones. It could have had more backstory into the characters and the villains. Like the villain, they don't really give you much about Nikolai. They just kind of show him here and there, and he's trying to get money for the virus and whatever, but there's not as much. I mean, I kind of think there could have been more dialogue and interaction, and you could have been doing more things. I know, I didn't fully play the original, but I've seen the full gameplay. My brother, he's actually the one who's a huge fan of Resident Evil 3 Nemesis and has beaten it like 20 times. And he was the one that was telling me more about all the criticisms of the remake and what they cut out, and like scenes like the gas station. That was an iconic. I remember seeing the cutscene for it too. They also cut out the clock tower segment where you go into the clock tower and do all the crap that you got to do and then encounter Nemesis at the top. So this truly goes on to see that were they actually cutting out content for fluidity of the story, or were they actually doing it because they were on a budget, which obviously they're all on a budget, but maybe tighter budget is what I meant to say, and wanting to rush out the game by a certain date, and possibly because they're also a public company. At some point, they want to release a game by a certain time, and they need to meet those financial numbers, right? They need to meet those sales numbers. So I don't know. I guess at the end of the day, to stop this rant over Resident Evil RE-verse is kind of a piece of crap that should have never been born, never should have been released, and the resources should have been focused on just making Resident Evil 3 Remake an even better experience than what it actually ended up being, So maybe, I know that Capcom has come a long way since then, really made up for it with Resident Evil 4 Remake, which I ended up playing. I beat it last year. It's a great game. Loved it. If anybody hasn't played it, go get yourself a copy. The game is discounted all the time. It's like $20 for the standard version and $30 for the gold edition that comes with the DLC separate ways where you play as Ada Wong. But anyways, that's the rant over for today. Thanks for listening. Make sure you like the video, subscribe. If you don't like it, dislike the video as well. And let me know in the comments what you think and what you hope to see in the future of the Resident Evil franchise.